Dive into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, and business with Caplander, hosted by Jody and Morgan of J. Thielander Consulting. Whether you're invested in the private capital markets, building your own venture, or curious about the entrepreneurial spirit, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping today's market and the people driving what's next. Caplander connects the dots between personal and professional life because how you do anything is how you do everything. Featuring expert guests, deep discussions, and a dynamic mother-daughter duo, Caplander is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hi, Jody.
I'm Morgan Thielander. What's a Morgan Thielander Karasik? I realize you just had your third anniversary?
Yes, my third wedding anniversary.
Yeah. And I noticed because every once in a while when I'm reminiscing about, your life and all that, I listen to the speech that I did, the toast at your wedding.
Right.
And I heard myself, instead of saying Morgan and Ryan, your husband, I'm so used to saying Morgan and Blake, you and your brother. So I heard myself say Morgan and then I sort of like tripped up there. But I didn't say it. I got to the Ryan part. So I apologize for calling you just Morgan Thielander.
I'm not honestly upset about it. It's technically still my name. It's just my middle name now.
Right.
And in business, I am Morgan Thielander. Like, I don't use my married name when it comes to anything with work.
Your maiden name. Why don't guys have this? Like, we have friends who've gotten married, gay guys, and they hyphenate their name. So what? It's their former name because it's not their maiden name. I mean, it's so sexist, right? Maiden name.
I mean, it's all property. Like, if you actually want the answer, like, that's what it comes back to. Like, you become, and like old times, whatever, you become your husband's property. It's like, we are Jewish, so we signed.
Probably why I'm not married.
Right. Yeah. You'd have to.
The property's too expensive for you.
Right. Truly, you'd have like a dowry. It'd be through the roof what somebody would have to do.
The landlord could afford me, so okay.
Well, I do have a question because I am in love with the Scottish people who are here for the World Cup who have now
Eating
moved.
their chicken nuggets and dipping in mayonnaise and drinking beer.
It's not mayonnaise, it's ranch. They're obsessed with ranch.
They like the ranch.
Not mayonnaise,
Okay.
It's ranch. They love fried chicken and ranch, and they can't get over the combo meals for $6 at Popeyes. So that's the big thing. But now the Tartan Army has taken over Miami, and that's a whole thing because that's
I've seen them. I saw them. I've seen them here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how's that?
The guys in the kilts, it's like 95 fucking degrees out and these guys are in kilts. So
Right.
I've seen them and they're hilarious.
I mean, it's a whole thing, truly. I think so. There's a couple of different ways that we can start. So there was an article that came out this morning and it talked about how Silicon Valley is obsessed with trust stacking and the IRS doesn't like it. And we've had 2 episodes already with guests who are really more of the experts in what QSBS is and how to stack and what that means.
So QSBS stands for Qualified Small Business Stock. Yeah, QSBS. And entrepreneurs and founders are well versed in because founders, when they get into starting a company and they raise capital, they want to not only be successful, but with part of that is that they want a liquidity event. And the liquidity event is ideally comes with wealth creation. And you've seen this now with all these companies, OpenAI, that there have been, people who were even junior in these companies who had stock. And in order to maximize that wealth and minimize the taxes, you can stack gifting and setting up trusts so that you can be exempt from some taxes. And I believe it's up to $15 million.
That is correct.
Right. And so that's what this article was about. And we've done 2 webinars and we've had 2 guests as well, Christine Leon Connors and then Al, who has a company called Get Dynasty. And he was actually quoted in the Wall Street Journal article.
It does show that even the Wall Street Journal can make mistakes because they called him Alejandro versus Alessandro, and they did correct it. But when I saw it this morning, I was like, I didn't realize you had a name change. So I saw the article and texted it to him. And before I had even gotten to the end and read his quote, I had sent it his way and he was like, oh, I'm in this. I was like, oh, probably should.
Right? He doesn't even know he's so busy. But actually, I thought you were going to say it shows how good we are that we've had these top people and that we really, the innovative world and that ecosystem of service providers who work with private companies and investment firms, there's actually not that many of us who really know our shit. And so we're lucky that these are our friends and colleagues that we get to work with, and that we really also value each other's input, and we have a lot of respect, because it's important to understand that this being a founder and being innovative is a mindset, and everybody needs help.
Yes. And what I really think is so interesting is you used OpenAI as an example, and I really like the SpaceX example of where there were floor workers or shop workers who are more on the manufacturing side of the rockets who were making less than $30 an hour, who walked away from the IPO being millionaires
Yeah.
because of the equity piece of it. And so it is something where obviously it did not happen fast. This was not a year turnaround, but it does show. And where the article is great is it really breaks down how QSBS and trust stacking works. But what it didn't touch on, which is where we come in, is that before you do the wealth planning piece, you need to make sure that your equity or carried interest, whether you are a startup founder or an investor, that your percentages are right.
Right, you're getting the right amount. First things first, you got to know what you're getting and if you're getting the right numbers. And that's where we come in. So I think it's really important.
It's very tied together. It's very holistic.
Yeah.
Of course, how we do we say a lot of these things. It's like how you do anything is how you do everything, but
Everything.
this feeds into it because the reality is like if you're going to distribute your wealth, which is what Al said in this article, you want to make sure that your starting point is correct because otherwise everything down the road is going to be off.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking my language, Morgan. I mean, I have built a career for 30 years. I've been saying this.
Yeah.
And the smart companies and the CEOs keep coming back because they don't give a shit about the bedside manner and the delivery. They listen to the message, which is a good segue into our next discussion around a couple of, really baller people that we've been reading about, Bethenny Frankel and Dave Portnoy. So I'll turn it over to you to get us going on that.
Yes, I listened to Emma Greed's podcast episode last week with Bethany Frankel, and I've not really, to tell you just in full transparency, I don't use TikTok, so I don't really see Bethany's TikToks, but I have girlfriends that do, and I do catch kind of the second round on Instagram, which seems kind of like the second platform. But the episode was great and kind of high level. I mean, Bethany Frankel is making more than $20 million a year in brand deals.
You have to know who she is, because not everybody listening is going to know.
Bethany Frankel is the original creator of the Skinny Girl Margarita. That was her first foray into business. She did this while she was on Bravo's Real Housewives of New York TV show, which is a reality TV show. And she was on that show for years and years and years. And she left and came back, but she has been the same person through and through. And she had a platform before, but she really said that during COVID was when she started making these TikToks on really basic things like doing her makeup from items at the drugstore and
Hmm.
reviewing items and reviewing things like chicken salad and things that she bought on Amazon. And her whole thing was that she was like, I'm not going to gatekeep. I'm gonna
Yeah.
share what I see that works. She's ordered the Row knockoff handbags from Amazon that look just like the real thing. She's roasted
Well,
Hermes, like
yeah, he is unfiltered, and that's part of, also from my vantage point, having watched her on Housewives, where everyone had an opinion. Now, they loved her or they hated her, and she was mouthy, and she didn't give a shit, and she called it like, people found her to be offensive, and people found her great. But in the meantime, she's so creative, and she never stops thinking, and she turns these things into products, and now she's sort of done with the products, and she is figuring out where her influence can impact what people buy. So when she says she likes something, then she is smart. She gets a piece of the action. She gets equity, and she takes a percentage of what she sells, or she takes an interest in the company. And that's really, I think, impressive. And she makes, a fuck ton of money.
yeah. Well, there's two pieces of it that you touched on that are really key to the business of Bethenny Frankel. One is that she does have the ability to move product, and she has the ability to move product because people, regardless of how they feel about her as a person, they trust that what she's saying is
She's
true
credible. Yeah,
and
she's credible.
authentic. She's not, and I think what's really interesting, like a detail about this is that brands and companies are paying her regardless of whether or not she's praising the product. A lot of the time what she says is like they'll send her something, and she said this on Emma Greed's podcast, is she's like, "If you send me something, I will try it.
I'll try it.
I'll
One
try
way or it's
anything."
may take her months, she said, but she'll try it.
Right, and a lot of it too is that she's like, "If I don't like it and I see what could be done differently, that's really valuable feedback because if I see something wrong with it, somebody else is, and if you're gonna
And
hear it
that's the
from me."
risk the company takes when they send it to her is that she's gonna say what she thinks.
Well, that's really where she said it got into it, and she was like, "That's where brands wanna work with me because 'cause they're like, 'How do we fix it?'" If you're at that inflection point where something's not working for the consumer and Bethany Frankel's on TikTok talking about how your coffee machine sucks, that's a problem, and that's a
Right.
problem that's going to hinder your growth as a company because are not going to be able to get to that next phase without fixing something. It's
Yeah,
going to
people
resonate.
hear it. Yeah. And then the other person who sort of falls into the same kind of genre is Dave Portnoy. So explain to us who he is.
So Dave Portnoy is the founder, CEO of
Sport.
Barstool, right? And
Yeah.
Barstool is essentially at this point a media company, but he had a whole Wall Street Journal magazine feature because he has a book coming out. And he is also similar to Bethany Frankel, completely outspoken.
Unfiltered.
He is
Yeah.
the definition of like, I don't give a fuck. And he's also the person who goes out and gives all the pizza reviews. Like he's built in this very similarly to Bethany, a brand. And the whole brand of Barstool is that he really talked about that he hires people who are good at what they do and he lets them run wild, which has obviously resulted in certain podcasts like Call Her Daddy. There's been scandals along the way, whatever. But it's this whole media company that's focused on sports and then gambling. But it sounds like the gambling partnership didn't quite work out in the way because there were too many legalities to it. But
Yeah.
focusing on the sports and the whole culture around it, like very Boston central.
Yeah. Well, I liked his idea and his concept, which is really, I mean, I've used this independent of him, where I like to hire people who are good at what they do. And I'm not a manager at all. I'm a very bad manager, actually, because I don't have the patience for it. So I let you do most of the managing. But even so, when you come in with an idea, I'm like, great, tell me about it. Like, I want to know. And I don't want to be doing a lot of founder CEOs are unable to delegate and they want their fingers on everything. And that's absolutely not my mindset.
Yeah. Where I see things have evolved in even the last 10 years is that the social media aspect, really the marketing piece of it, allows companies and businesses and founders in particular to build their own brand. And because, especially now, the way that people consume and buy, it really is that if you're buying something or you're a client of a business, you are supporting them because money is not flowing in the way that it always has, and things are
It
not
used to be. Right.
right, and things are more expensive than they have been. So
There are.
if you're gonna buy something or do business with somebody, you have to like them or like what they're doing in some capacity.
I don't agree with you on that. I think most people do not care at all about the brand and what it represents and who's behind it. And half the time I buy something, I don't even know. Oftentimes, if I like something, we'll then Google it or and see what the who's behind it, and I find that interesting. But short of something that I don't believe in or I don't support, I don't look at it that way. I'm based on price and whether something works.
Yeah, you're just about the efficacy of it.
Yeah, I'm just about the product, but I don't care about the whole history behind it. That's more your generation. Listen, your grandparents have a lot of spending power and they're very specific about what they buy. But and how many times has Papa torn a page out of a magazine or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal saying, "Oh, I like these shoes," and then I researched and saw that they were hand sewn or something about them. But other than that, they don't really think like that. And so you have to assume a lot of people who have money are older and they're not thinking about the same social media and marketing.
But that's exactly why, like, I subscribe to Architectural Digests, and I get the magazines, and I like to really see what people advertise in those magazines because because you are the worst in this because you're like, Ferrari doesn't advertise, but Ferrari has an F1 team. So they absolutely advertise. It's just in different ways.
Not only advertising, they're doing this because they want to stay relevant themselves and stay current. It's not advertising so that people buy the car. It's more so,
It's
being,
the aesthetic of it though too, like how it
yeah,
comes across and like all of these things. Like this is like my latest AD issue had Van Cleef
yeah.
and Defenders, and then Miele appliances. Because the idea is that you're gonna get in your car with your Van Cleef necklace and your matching Van Cleef earrings, and then you're gonna get into your Defender, and then you're gonna drive to your gorgeous house, and you're gonna make the cup of coffee on your Miele espresso machine. Like, it's
So
all
let's
together.
talk about this. Let's talk about where generationally and, just in business overall and the whole things about what you wear and all this, where we're the same. So is Van Cleef a yes or a no?
Hell yes.
Hell yes. Is Ferrari a yes or a no?
I don't give a shit about a nice car. But I would pay to do one of those experiences where you get to drive the Ferrari at, like, a racetrack, but I don't wanna pay the insurance on that or the maintenance.
Okay. On other things, like in terms of whether you'd wear it, I'd wear it, even your grandmother wears it generationally. So Hermes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So these brands have stood the test of time. And
Even
actually,
Margaret O'Leary, we talked about who we had on our podcast last week, same thing.
right.
That's a
Rolex,
generational yes,
Rolex
anything
is
with
a
quality.
yes or no.
Yes, any high-end watch, yes, but Gail would be like, "No."
Okay, but your Papa would be a hell yeah.
Yeah, he'd be like, "What size and what
Yeah.
color?"
Or how many? He would get a couple if he could.
Correct.
Okay, and that's where, though, I think it's a good way to wind up as it relates to Thielander, is that I got trained when I worked for Vogue and I worked for Ralph Lauren Women's Wear, and I knew about brands that stood the test of time, both of which still do. We read Vogue, we just read it online. So they've morphed into this whole next generation where things are online. I don't even know, they probably publish a magazine, but no one that's
I
not as
read
relevant.
I still pick up the September issue every year at an airport, and I also have to say that I love the videos on their YouTube channel that are a little bit longer. I don't really care for some of the articles are all paywalled, so that makes it a little bit more
Right,
challenging.
but they're staying relevant, and that's the important thing. And then Ralph Lauren, is Ralph Lauren a yes or a no?
Hell yes, baby.
Hell yes, right? That
I
even that
actually like their men's clothes even more than I like their women's clothes in certain areas because I like the fit of the shirts more, and I've worn a lot of their men's clothes during, my pregnancy as my non-maternity maternity clothes.
right, but the regardless or the reality is that Ralph Lauren stuff has stayed very consistent and also evolved in some ways. Same thing as Vogue, and I would argue same thing as Thielander. At the end of the day, we are still a compensation data and consulting firm, and we run surveys, and there are certain things that at times when maybe we've had to think, well, are we going to plug into payroll? Are we going to do all these other things? And we always come back to the original tenants that I started the business with, and that stands the test of time. Now you got to zhuzh it up, and we've got to have Instagram, and we've got to have TikTok, and we have clips, and we, do our webinars. We've got the Caplander podcast, but we have stayed true. And I think that is actually a perfect way to wind up, is that a lot of things do stay the same. And the unfiltered nature of people like Bethenny Frankel and Dave Portnoy are very much how I built a business, because my personality is such that I am outspoken and I am very direct, and I'm not speaking badly and I'm not speaking harshly, but I'm not sure that everybody can handle that. But I think there is a lane for successful people who do have opinions and that they believe in it to the point where they're not ever turning back.
That I do have one kind of final wrap-up question because obviously you are my mother, and at this point, I'm coming into the last couple of weeks of not having, um of being without a child physically in my possession. But for the generational piece of it, like, brands is one piece, but what do you think is generational parenting advice then? Like, things that just stand the test of time?
At some point, your child needs to sleep. And I know there's been a lot of opinions on whether the baby needs a separate room or they sleep in your bed. And I'm old school. Baby sleeps in their own bed in a crib. The other things are, at a certain point, you got to play warfare. You got to transition a child to sleep. And if that clock is 6 in the morning or 4 in the morning, then at a certain point, they're going to have to tough it out and self soothe and be able to sleep through the night. And then as the certain things as a child gets older, and I have to say you are just phenomenal this way, is there are certain old school things like thank you notes and manners and respect and breeding that are absolutely important and very much the parent's responsibility to teach a child. And I've not had one, but I've had at least 2 or 3 people that you've written thank you notes from the baby shower and who've given you gifts. And everyone has said, your daughter is lovely and she has incredible manners. And they know that part of that came from your mother. So now that you're going to be a mother, you better order up that stationery and figure out how you get that child of yours, require that child to write a thank you note. Very important.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I have a girlfriend stay. P.S. I was just thinking about this today because I found her earring in the guest room and she came and stayed. And I hope she's listening. And I contributed to her airfare. I actually used miles and paid for her airfare. And for the love of God, I did not get a thank you note. Now, I should have.
It is a different, I don't want to say it's a different way.
That's no way.
Drink that tea.
I didn't know what's in here, Morgan. It could be anything. It is water,
Well,
but
my last piece of it in terms of the breeding or like the thank you note piece of it was that my little backstory of it was that I now have all of my boxes from my childhood room in Mill Valley. And when I went through the boxes of my room, one of the things that were in those boxes was was unopened crane stationery with a ladybug on the front and then red interior lining of the cards. And because they had been sitting in storage for however long, I mean, obviously the paper was thick, everything was beautiful, but I used those thank you cards as a part of my for the next generation for the baby shower thank you notes
they were
because
still good, right?
they were still good.
Yeah.
Totally talk about branding and standing the test of time. I mean, they sat in those
There's
boxes.
certain things in old school is old school. So I think that's what, really what today's effect was from this discussion, which was completely unplanned, is that, we're not going to be AI everything. AI is not writing a thank you note. It is good old handwriting. And there are certain businesses like ours that are always going to stand the test of time because people want someone that they can trust and they want to listen to someone like Bethenny because they believe her and she's not talking about something she doesn't know. And I think that, that trust and the integrity in all ways of our life is really important.
I think it separates it actually. I think that there's just a different lane now. I think that there's the mass general lane gets a little bit wider, but I think that elite precision lane where you have a certain area of expertise or you have a certain area of knowledge that becomes more coveted.
Yeah. There's always going to be a market for that.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for joining us today for the Caplander podcast. If you loved this episode, share it and make sure to subscribe to Caplander for more conversations like this.